Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to the pre-show for the book study, Dune book study part 2 tonight that we'll be picking up at 10 p.m. Depending, well, most likely yes we are, but Big Al has been suffering my worst fear today. His power went out. Everybody, all my friends' power are going out now. It's no good, internet and everything. And he just texted me. He said his power's back, but he's waiting for the internet and cable to cycle back up. So everything should be fine. He should be here and everything. Worst case scenario, if he's not, then we will, we'll figure out something. But got to have my trusty TA Big Al with me. Looks like camera's being a little wonky, unless that's just my YouTube feed, but it does look like that. Let me see if I can. Let's see if I want to play with that a little bit to fix that up. I'll show you my one of my new cool Dune avatars that I've got for this tonight's stream. There we go. This one is courtesy of Mr. Troy Pacelli. Thank you, Mr. Troy Pacelli. Don't know if you're here yet. Haven't gotten to welcome to the chat yet. Just trying to fix that little camera issue. But also thanks to Stephen Cruz for doing the great music that I've been using as that intro. Always cool. Let's see now. Hopefully this will work. It usually does for that camera business. Make sure I've got my phone Wi-Fi off too. Sometimes that can be a problem. I don't know. StreamYard's just weird lately. Don't know what's going on with it. Okay. Back to that, and I'll see how that works. As we move up, see Big Al's in the chat says, I have power. Yes, but do you have internet? Are you capable of joining us later yet? That's the question. Paladin demo is first in the chat. Looks like that cleared up the camera. Don't know why that works, but I'm glad it does. Mr. Matchstick, Turtle Man strikes again. Who's Turtle Man? I don't get that. Is that am I Turtle Man or is Paladin demo Turtle Man? I don't get that. Back to the drawing board. Welcome. Welcome. Said someday soon I will have something for the writing lesson again. Cool. Yeah, that's great. And I hope you do. I hope you submit it. Now, today I did not ask for samples because I'm doing something a little different today. I'm going to have a little bit of a looser panel or just talk about theme and just kind of see where it goes. And I don't know how long it'll go, but we'll see. I didn't want to be pushed and rushing up against a writing sample to have to get through everything. We'll pick that up again next week. Welcome, Melissa Harris. Wolf 10 Media is with us. Welcome. Owen Lister. Sound Engravers with us. Sertorian Clegane. Paladin Demo. I already said Paladin Demo. Daniel Heron. John Malin. Hey, John Malin. Don't know if you're still here, but you were at some point. Welcome. And always good to see you, Mr. Malin. Haven't seen you in a while. Big Al said, David Deister's with us. Let's see. I think that's all in the chat for right now. We've got quite a few people watching, so do click the thumbs up if you will. And let me refresh. Camera's getting a little wonky again. I don't know what's going on. We do have some storms in the area. Not really directly over us necessarily, but circling. Don't have any other tabs open. This is getting to be kind of a pain. I won't lie. StreamYard is it's not my webcam. My webcam's a nice Logitech webcam. Not the greatest top of the line, but it works. But this is clearly a StreamYard issue, so I don't know why. Some nights it just gives more trouble than the others. We will see how it does here in a moment. Let's see. Oh, Mr. Matchstick says YouTube was Turtle Man, and Turtle Man is a Flash villain. Oh, the turtle. Okay, from the Flash. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. YouTube was Turtle Man. Okay. YouTube was going slow for you, I guess. Man, this stinks. The stupid camera. Let me do the trick one more time. I didn't think I was gonna have to do the whole thing, but stop the cam and do this before I start chatting with you. Luckily, it's a good night for it, though. I mean, on the one hand, it's a bad night for it because I don't have anything to show you, so I can't really minimize myself. But on the other hand, we're not up against a real clock here or time or anything, so it should be fine. Let's see here. It comes through so crystal clear on the StreamYard page, but once we get to YouTube, that's where the fussiness goes. Melissa Harris said I'm buffering for a second there. Hopefully not anymore. I don't see any buffering. I don't think. No, it's not my phone. I've got the Wi-Fi completely off on my phone. I don't know what's going on. Must just be a bad night for it. But we will move along and see how it works. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, we'll get to that, Mr. Matchstick. Don't worry. We'll mention all that stuff at the end. um, Matt Wilkins is here. Welcome, Matt Wilkins. Reading Children of Dune at the moment. Nice, nice. Welcome. Good to see you, Matt. Everybody go follow Matt Wilkins there. He's and I got to get you another Star Wars EU review, Matt. I've dropped the ball on that. Got busy with a bunch of things this summer and neglected to do that. Where I'm up to now, I think I'm up to Tales of the Jedi, the graphic novels. So yeah, Matt Wilkins is a EU aficionado and behind a lot of the cool websites and stuff like that I've shared. So definitely check that out. Yeah, back to Joinbar says you're a little grainy, but no buffering. Well, that's good. So no buffering, but I don't know why it's grainy. It's just not going to cooperate with me tonight. I'll try the trick one more time. Just fingers crossed. I guess when I cut this out and make it its own video, I can always just put images up over it, you know, if it's if this doesn't work, but at least you can hear me. That's you know, that's the important thing. There, and there. See. I don't know. See how it works. Great, Matt. Yeah, I'd love to do some more of those. Yeah. Yeah, that's the reason it's grainy. I know. I don't know. StreamYard's been weird. The last couple of rewatches we did too sounded fine during the live rewatch. My panel came in and we weren't talking over each other or anything. It was fine. But when it processed and played back as a video, it was it sounded like my track was delayed or something like that. So we started talking over each other and it was bizarre. I didn't like it at all. So I don't know what's going on there. But sorry about the grainy video. Maybe it'll clear up soon. I don't know. We'll keep checking it out. But let's go ahead and talk about the writing. This is the pre-show. We're going to do the writing lesson on, and then the book study will start here at 10. So today I want to talk about theme. And theme is something that, depending on who you talk to, you're going to get different ideas about theme. If you talk to a creative writing professor, somebody who's used to creative writing, and that's really all they do, that's where they've studied, what they were brought up in, they're going to tend to try to play down the idea of theme. Oh, theme, don't even worry about theme. You shouldn't be concerned about theme as a writer. That's something those English professors worry about, and that'll get you bogged down into a bunch of nonsense. That's what they'll say. I even had a creative writing professor one time say, I don't want to hear anybody say the word theme. That's just ridiculous, and blah, 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 blah. It's a really, really stupid and asinine view to have as a writer. Extremely stupid, and it comes from I think a jealousy or an indignation. It's like, don't talk to me of theme. That's those English professors. We are the scholarly field of writing and creating the writing. That's for them who can't write but teach or study, that kind of thing. I think it comes from this sort of false sense of conflict between the two disciplines, and it's stupid because there should be no conflict between the two disciplines. I mean, I have a master's in English, the actual study of literature, and an MFA in creative writing. And I've never seen where the two needed to conflict with each other. They've always been perfectly complementary, minus all the agenda-driven stuff, that academia of the liberal arts will try and shove in there. But theme is important. And you'll also have even people who will begrudgingly admit that theme is important, like Stephen King, for example. Stephen King, if you've ever read his book on writing, it's a great read. I definitely recommend it. You have to take everything he says with a little bit of grain of salt, because on the one hand, writing is such a personal discipline. It does need to be a discipline. It is a craft, and there are certain right things to do and certain wrong things to do, period. It's not all subjective. But it is, there are some things that, even he said in that book that I realized, that's you talking from your prejudice against anything that remotely resembles a disciplined regimen of learning to write or something like that, But he admits that theme. He says theme is something you should go through at the very end of your writing. Think about theme. I don't think that's the case necessarily, but even he admits the importance of it. Why you need to think about theme is that if you don't understand what themes that your work tends to have in it, what themes that your writing tends to convey, then it's gonna run away with your work, and it'll end up being detrimental to your work in the end. And we see this with a lot of filmmakers, for example. You think about filmmakers who Hitchcock is a great example. This tends to be with filmmakers who are auteur filmmakers who are very intensely, they've got their fingerprints all over their films. And because you can recognize their themes, you can recognize the things they do. So you look at Hitchcock's movies, for example, and all of his great ones, you recognize these themes, the strong mother character, the idea of the anima. You can easily do a Jungian reading of Hitchcock there. That first stage of the anima, the untouchable goddess, but the maiden, right? The sexually available maiden, that kind of aspect of the anima you see in his films quite a bit. And you start to recognize patterns. Oh, he likes his icy blondes. Eventually, he gets to the point where all of his leading ladies have to have icy blonde hair. That's not that big of a deal, but okay, it's something little. It's a little touch he does. Eventually, if you look at his films chronologically, you find out that they do start to suffer towards the end of his life, and not toward the end of his life, but towards the end of his career, in quality. They do start to go down in quality because, and then I read biographies about him. And I read about the types of films he was trying to get off the ground, and they really are just, dude, whoa, what? Come on, rein yourself in just a little bit. You want to be careful when you psychoanalyze any artist or writer or something like that, because they are human beings, and you don't know the ins and outs of their entire mind. Of course, obviously, you don't want to sit in judgment over them. But at the same time, I think it's legit to do a psychoanalytic reading of an artist or a writer or whatever, because it's part of the work, part of the analysis of their work. And you look at the sexual repression that is always sort of latent in his films, and that's fine. It makes for a good theme in his work. But then towards the end of his life, he was trying to do these movies, like he was obsessed with doing a movie with a woman basically being raped at the beginning of it. It was just, what are you doing, dude? Like, no one was really believing in these movies either, because they just kind of saw him going off the deep end. And that's because he didn't check his themes. He didn't realize what was really driving him. And you've got to realize, these are the things that are in my work that tend to crop up to the top a lot. Okay. Use that, work with it. It's kind of like the Jungian shadow. Integrate it into yourself. Don't deny it or it'll overrun you, but integrate it into your work so that you control it and it doesn't overrun your work, so that you are actually still telling fresh and new stories and that it doesn't just completely overrun your work. I'll give you another example of how it can hurt your work. When I was working on this is another way that themes can develop too, but when I was working on my creative thesis for my MFA degree, it was a collection of a bunch of different tales. And it's called Objects of Desire, a collection of tales. And really proud of the work, what it ended up. But as I was working on the initial drafts and going through it with my mentor at the time, at one point early in the stage, he looked back and he said, you got these 3 or maybe even 4 stories right here, because it was a collection of a bunch of tales, they're very, very short. And he said, they're different stories, but look at your main character in each of them. They're essentially the same character. And at first I thought, that's ridiculous. They're all different ages. They're different names. What are you talking about? But then I stepped back enough and looked at the characters and I thought, oh, he's right. These are essentially the same characters, just different, kind of coats of paint on the outside. And because for whatever reason, at that point in my life, that type of character was just very front and foremost in my thinking or in my, my own psychology at the time or whatever. Because in your writing, your own psychology is going to come out. And it doesn't mean, it's not always transparent. You can't always just look at a writer's writing and say, oh, clearly they've got issues with this or whatever. You do have to kind of go through and, really consume a wide amount of a writer's work before you can really kind of make any such connections like that. But that's an example. So I had to go back and vary those characters up, and then in some cases even change the story around. Well, that's an example of if I had just not worried about theme or not worried about that kind of thing, then I would have just ended up with a bunch of similar characters, and that's tacky. That's very very amateurish, in a writer's work. So you see themes like that. Now, just because you should be able to recognize themes in other people's work. And just because you can doesn't mean that they're letting it overrun their work. An example, another filmmaker, for example, Joss Whedon. I think Joss Whedon does a great job of not allowing his themes to overrun his work. one of the themes that he really look at all of his movies, it's really in there. It's all over the place in his movies. He's got a bunch of different themes, but one of them is the young feminine character who seems helpless but is capable of really kicking butt. That's Buffy the Vampire Slayer, right? Obviously, that's River Tam from Serenity. That's Black Widow from the Avengers, right? Playing off of her femininity, looking all helpless and everything, but then kicking butt. So he likes that theme. He likes the theme, and it's kind of tied into that of the underdog team ensemble of main characters. That's kind of one of the things he says he learns with Buffy is you really do need an ensemble to lead a series. And that's what he did with Serenity in the series, the Firefly in the film, obviously the Avengers and whatnot. And there's a strong, despite his extreme liberal rhetoric, in social media and whatnot, there's a strong libertarian theme in all of his films. There's a strong, distrust of Big Brother kind of thing in his films. Obviously, in Serenity, right? If you've seen that, it's all about the rebels, against the Alliance, and then even in Avengers, you've got the Avengers themselves coming together against Shield. I mean, Nick Fury's kind of coaxing them together against the powers that be and the ones who are pulling the strings behind everything. So it is, you can notice themes like that, and you can also notice some things like clearly Joss Whedon loves his redheads. And just about everything he does, you can find a redhead. Not every little thing, I'm not prepared to say, but he does like to put those redheads in there, usually in prominent roles too, if not some way. But he likes to work them in, and that's fine. It doesn't overrun his work. It's not like Hitchcock's Icy Blonde, where every leading lady had to be, icy blonde there for a while. So you should be able to recognize certain themes in people's work, and that's kind of a mark of their artistry. It's a mark of somebody's writing, and that's good. So what does that mean for you now? Maybe you're just working on your first story, or maybe you've only written 2 or 3 things in your life, or maybe you've written a lot of things, that's fine. Wherever your stage you're at, you always want to have an eye toward your themes. How to go about doing this is to ask for other people's feedback, and you want to be specific about the feedback that you ask for. A lot of people, I noticed that a lot of beginning writers, for example, they're just as in need of encouragement, just as strongly in need of encouragement, I find, as they are of helpful critique and critical, positive criticism, or what's the word I'm looking at, critical feedback or whatever. But the problem with that is they don't tend to ask for the encouragement. They just tend to ask, hey, what did you think? And then if you say anything critical, they tend to get defensive, right? Well, you just don't understand what I was trying to do. I'll have people do that. Even some people who pay me to look at their work. I'm like, what did you pay me for? Just to give you a pat on the back or something? I mean, but it's important to give the positive reinforcement too. That's something that writers are artists. They need that. They need that reinforcement, and you need to know what worked in your work and what you can do more of. It's very important. So a lot of writers, when I'll do like workshops and stuff like that in class or whatever, and they just think, oh, I need to talk about what doesn't work in this piece to make myself sound smart. Well, no, you need to talk about what works first. That's just as important, if not even more in some places. So that's one of the things, right? Writers need encouragement. They need reinforcement. So be specific about the type of feedback you're asking for. Sometimes, or at some level of your work, maybe once you've got the story kind of ironed out and it's got a solid, connectivity, then ask somebody, what are some of the themes you thought you saw in it? Now, clearly, you're going to have to ask a certain type of reader for that. You're not just going to be able to ask anybody that next to you, because not your average reader isn't trained to look for themes. A lot of these things just pass people by right over their heads. But you want to ask, specifically, what are some themes, or what are some common patterns you see in my work? What are some characters, that you see reappearing and stuff like that? That kind of idea. You ask for there because they've got a sense of your work that you don't. You're often too close to it. You yourself can gain a sense of it if you wait a while and come back to your work after so many months. And if you can kind of distance yourself from that, if you worked on a few things since then, that's great. So you can try that as well to come back to it. Then you draw comparisons between a lot of your stories. If you're a short story writer or a novel writer or whatever, look at the examples, or put some work side by side, try and draw some comparisons, compare your character types. Remember I quote Gore Vidal a lot when he said that your average writer has a certain cast of characters in their head, and they tend to be pretty limited. You've got to really work to expand your cast of characters, because you'll note, for filmmakers too, that there's essentially, these characters are kind of the same. They work from the same archetype. I mean, in a film, it's a little different because you've got actresses and actors who are also interpreting these characters in their own way too. So you got different people adding their artistry to it. But from a writing archetype, River Tam from Serenity is the same character type as Natasha Romanoff from Black Widow. From the Avengers. There, of course, they're very different by the end. Again, you've got the different actresses and whatnot, and all these interpretations, and the different context of story, of course. But from that archetypal level, they tend to be very similar. So that that's something to look for too. Comparisons between your characters, comparisons between the values that your story tends to uphold, or lack thereof, or lack of values it might uphold. Stuff like that are the things that you'll look for. They'll draw out your themes, and once you start identifying your themes, in a way, it's a lifelong process. It's something that you're always want to have an eye toward your themes, because your themes will change too over your life. Not drastically, but they will shift as you go through different stages in your psychological development. And that's just part of living. That's part of a natural human growth. We go through different stages in psychological development and whatnot. Your themes will alter, or will be altered to reflect that. So you always want to have an eye to it. It's never that, okay, I've got it figured out now, I don't have to worry about it. That's the kind of idea there. Let me go back. I've been kind of ignoring the chat here while I just did the long spiel. Let me go back and check on the questions before I wrap it up with another thing I want to say here. Go back to anybody who tagged me here. Let's see. Patton Demo says it's making the stream, the graininess is making up for the no noir on Tuesday. Yeah. The grainy thread. David Deister. Yeah, actually it was the last writing. It was the last week's writing lesson. We looked on your, we looked over your the harem tale of your writing passage. So go back in the videos on the channel, look for last week's writing lesson I cut out as its own video, and there you'll have it. I think I cut it out as its own video. If I didn't cut it out as its own video, it's still on top of the Dune rewatch from our Dune book study of last week. But yeah, you can go find that there. We looked at it. 10 Media. Oh, unless you're talking about Beetle Blaze. Okay, great, cool. Sound Engraver said that's interesting. Theme for writers is the same as genre for composers. Oh, okay. I've recently heard the genre, the general dislike for the term. Oh, for genre and stuff like that. Oh, they don't like the word genre. I guess, yeah, because it feels like it pigeonholes them or something. Yeah, I can imagine that. Welcome, Squids McCracken. I see you're down here with us as well. One listener said, does the theme come naturally when writing the story without thinking about the theme at all? It does come naturally, but it won't be polished. And you run the risk of it coming off half-developed or overrunning your work in the long run. So that's another thing, half-developed. Stephen King talks about when he first wrote, his first novel that made any traction was was he talking about Carrie? Yeah, I think he was talking about Carrie, not Firestarter. He was talking about Carrie, but he noticed that fire was a central theme as he went back and looked at it in the end. And in my opinion, he should have looked at it a little bit more, because he could have integrated fire a lot more. But that theme of fire, a cleansing primal, primordial force, that was this woman, this young girl's abilities that were coming through, and manifesting in her puberty and whatnot. So they will show up, but they're not always going to be polished. They're not always, and honestly, in my opinion, themes are a big part of what makes a story a good piece of art, and not just a not just a story. Did this writer really take some time and polish their piece, or did they just spit out a narrative and now they're on to the next because they're just more worried about getting praise, and people patting them on the back. And Lister, the theme in the movie Heavy Metal is power corrupts everyone. Yeah, common theme in all the stories throughout that, definitely. Back to the drawing board says, I try to keep my story world separated by theme. My latest fiction world is about storytelling and history, and I don't want to tell stories they're not about those themes. Yeah, true. So, I mean, you can try and do that. At the same time, there are going to be themes that you just can't help. It is tied to the subconscious, and to some extent, it is going to come through in all your work regardless. But it is fine to consciously try to separate certain themes from others. You know, that's a cool idea. Definitely. David Dyster said, "How do you think of the Sonic the Hedgehog story and theme?" Still haven't seen the movie yet. I need to. That's something on my list. I do want to watch the movie because I've heard so many good things about it. In terms of the Sonic mythos in general, I've just played the first 2 games on Sega Genesis, and that's about it. Didn't really even watch the cartoons or read the comics much, but I hear good things about them. Let's see. Any other questions about the writing there? Don't think so. Tim Media says, speaking of Firestarter. Okay, yeah. So the other thing that I want to talk about, the last thing I want to tie this idea of theme to, is you can start to spot theme, and I want to tie it to agenda, because we're seeing, you know, this is one of the things I talk about, the problems of agenda overrunning storytelling. And this is, I guess, it's sort of tenuously related, but it's something I wanted to talk about anyway. And if I want to cut it out as its own video, I can, or just keep it as a part of this. But in Hollywood right now, it's been completely overrun by agenda. You know, I made the video a little while ago saying Hollywood simply can't be trusted. They're not worth supporting. They're just not worth supporting. You need to step away. Don't support them. They don't know how to fix it, and they won't fix it unless you let them hit utter rock bottom and completely purge out the sickness that's in Hollywood right now. That means maybe doing without the little shiny bauble Hollywood spits out your way, and just trying to act like, well, the little piece of rot on the back isn't such a big deal. No, it is. It's a big deal. That doesn't need to be there, and it shouldn't. And there was a time where it wouldn't be there, but because it's so insidious, this agenda-driven, political-driven movement in Hollywood right now, people don't have any self-control, and people don't have any ability to say, I'm stepping back from that, for a number of reasons. So the big thing, most pressing right now, is the Bill and Ted movie, the Bill and Ted Face the Music. I'm a huge Bill and Ted fan. We did the rewatches on my channel and Al's channel as well. Loved it. I was really hoping for a third movie for so long. Was so excited when I heard they'd be doing it. Then it comes out, oh, by the way, they gender swapped Bill and Ted's children. So now they're daughters. They're not sons. Not just that, but Rufus's daughter is going to be there. Obviously, George Carlin, sadly passed away and can't be there. But they're going to have Rufus's daughter too. Daughter. And everybody rightly pointed out this is ridiculous. And Ed Solomon, one of the creators and writers, was extremely disregarding and rude and flippant about it, and tried to say that people were stupid and he knows what he's doing and blah blah blah. And people were upset about it. But now we're seeing a movement, especially on YouTube, of people saying, guys, it's not agenda driven. There's nothing, it's not a woke film or anything. It's actually totally okay. It really is good, guys. Really, you should go see it. And I see this is the same thing that happened with the Joker movie. A lot of people on YouTube, not necessarily those of you in my chat here, because you guys disagree with me all the time, and that's great. That means you think for yourselves. But there are a lot of people on YouTube, or a lot of people who just pick their pet YouTubers that they just allow to think for them. And well, so-and-so said it was okay. Well, so-and-so said it was going to be good. What does that have to do with anything? I've had people actually use that as an argument to me when I was talking about season 7 of Clone Wars and how it was awful. It was total just Mary Sue, Ahsoka Tano all over the place, and it was awful, after the Bad Batch arc anyway. And, they didn't like that at all. People were arguing with me. And then one guy even said, well, Thor Skywalker likes it. What do you freaking do? What does that have to do with anything? Is that an argument? Does that at all, refute any of the things I'm saying about it? And they act like, you can't, well, if you like these YouTubers, you have to agree with it. No, I think Thor Skywalker's awesome. I love Mecha Random's channel. I think Doomcock is great. But I don't have to agree with them all the time. And it's ridiculous that you should even think that, they said they liked it. What does that got to do with anything? Did they make a particular argument that you think's relevant to the discussion we're having? Then throw that up. But it drives me crazy when people will, or they'll just like post a link as a response to my to one of my videos, like, well, this person said this. You're that intellectually lazy, you can't even write out the argument yourself. You've just got to go, hey, watch this video instead. No. In fact, my channel is kind of sad. That's kind of bad YouTube etiquette anyway, to post links to other videos in certain people's in the comment section of other people's videos. I've got the setting where it automatically bumps to spam anyway, because you never know what kind of link they're posting. But now I'm not talking about the YouTube group. I mean, the Facebook group. Obviously, the Facebook group is 100% for discussion, and people post different videos from other YouTubers all the time, and people discuss things. That's great. Not talking about that necessarily, but in the YouTube comments, that's not an argument. Just because so and so or so and so, in the Joker, oh my gosh, well so and so liked the Joker, so and so thought the Joker. I really think you're wrong, and you really should see the Joker because it's really a good movie. Stop. Did you even hear what I said? I said, I don't care if it's a good movie. It probably is a good movie from all the things people are saying about it. It's the wrong treatment of the Joker. From the foundation up, deal breaker. I don't want anything to do with it. Yeah, but you should really see. No, I shouldn't. Shut up and listen to yourself. I mean, people become such sheep. They can't, it's fine if you don't think that that's a foundation, a deal breaker with the Joker, or if you just don't care, the Joker isn't important to you and you don't care or whatever, then fine. But you can't just disregard somebody's argument because you can't refute it or you can't argue against it. And the thing where people are trying to say now, actually, Bill and Ted's Face the Music isn't agenda driven. It's not agenda driven. Yes, it is. Don't tell me it's not agenda driven. There's no other conceivable reason for them to gender swap Bill and Ted's children. They were sons at the end of Bogus Journey. Don't give me any of that malarkey and try to say, well, they didn't say, and blah, blah, blah. They are sons. They made the conscious effort in today's climate to make them a woman for the virtue signaling points, for the agenda-driven points. Then they bring in Rufus's daughter for the agenda-driven points too. Now, maybe that's all, okay? Maybe that's all in the movie. Maybe the rest of the movie is actually really great. I don't care. You've let them do that little bit. You've accepted that shiny bauble with the piece of rot on the back. That's unacceptable to me. If that's the kind of content that you're willing to just be satisfied with from Hollywood now, great, go for it. You're never going to get anything good anymore because you can't wait. You can't just calm down and wait for them to learn their lesson. It's like teaching a child, as I said in my last video. My daughter is on the autistic spectrum. And one of the things that I work with her is to be able to look people in the eye and say hello. Or respond to them, look them in the face and say hello, because that's a basic social skill. Now, if I were to say, well, she said hi. She didn't look them in the eye. She's kind of looking at her shoes, but she said hi. It's good enough. It's good enough. It's not that bad. Well, that's not okay. That's detrimental to her, throughout her life. But that's what people are doing with Hollywood. Well, it's not that bad. I mean, they do have a lot of this stuff in it, and it's actually it's pretty good. I have to, overlook that. No, it's not acceptable. That's not how we fix Hollywood. That's how you enable Hollywood. That's how you tell them, don't worry. We're still here. We're still going to consume everything you do. And they just start going back to their old tricks again. That doesn't fix anything. And the reason I'm likening this in my conversation with Theme is because that's the theme. It's agenda driven. You see the theme in Hollywood. Hollywood has a common theme right now of gender swapping, racial swapping, doing any of these things, which maybe aren't even a problem in themselves, but it's because of the agenda. It's because of that virtue signaling. It's because of the agenda, and they allow that to override the story in a bunch of different ways, and that's the problem. That's what we have to stand up against, and we can't allow these little things to slip through just because we're desperate to consume something from Hollywood again, Sound Engraver, thank you very much for the $5 super chat. Says, thank you. I love Thor Skywalker's channel, and I like most of what he argues. I'm fine when I disagree with him. The Siege of Mandalore. Exactly. And this is what I love about you guys in the chat here for my channel. Like I said, you guys disagree with me all the time, but you keep showing up, and that's fine. No one ever should assume that just because you're watching my channel, you agree with everything I say. That's absurd, and it should be absurd for anybody listening to anybody else's channel. I listen to a lot of channels, and I don't agree with everything they say, but it's cool. And then you've got, some people can, really draw some hard lines. Oh, you're subscribed to their channel. Oh, well, I guess you're okay with everything they did over here. Why does that have to be a requisite? That's ridiculous. Stop playing these schoolyard games and start thinking a little bit out of a false binary context. Let's grow up a little bit. I mean, plenty of you guys, probably love the Joker movie, and you're still with me. And I ranted and railed against the Joker movie, and will continue to, as I'm doing now. But to throw out these silly arguments, that's the problem. And I think that, and I argue for a little more discernment, especially now coming off of. I'm trying to avoid YouTube watchwords, but coming off of the area that we're coming off of, so Hollywood's finally, theaters are opening back up and such. Especially coming off of this thing we've gone through, I think we've got a hand to play. We've got a little bit more power, and I'm seeing so many people around me just willing to toss it in. Doesn't matter. Want to go see it? Need to go see it? And I'm not saying there's movies that I hope are really good. I hope this or that movie proves to be good, but I have no reason to trust that it will be. It needs to prove it to me that it will be, So I'll stop there. I'll also go down a bunch of rabbit holes and talk about a bunch of different separate movies. But let me address the chat again here before we keep going through. If I missed anything. David Deister said Thor Skywalker placed Rey at 16th place on his look at the heroes and villains of the Star Wars universe. I don't know how many he had in that list, but that's far too high for me as a placement. But again, love Thor Skywalker, great channel. I like all the other people I mentioned and others. Geeks and Gamers, man, Jeremy's the coolest guy in the world from Geeks and Gamers. Love that channel. I don't agree with everything that channel talks about, or even everything that Jeremy necessarily talks about, and that's okay. It means you're human. It means you've got a brain and you think for yourself, on issues. And I'm capable to not hate him just because he disagrees with me. I had one follower one time who expressed such, like, he could not handle it when I tweeted about or made a video about an opinion that he didn't share. Because as he put it, he respected my opinion so much and he shared so many of my opinions that he just couldn't handle it when I would say something that was against something some other character he believed in or whatever. And it got to be an issue. It was like, dude, you need to stop ranting about this all the time. If you want to have a debate about it, let's have a debate about it. But otherwise, let it go. Where people are going to disagree. YouTubers, commentators, and whatnot aren't your, they shouldn't be your heroes. Right? We shouldn't be your heroes, right? We're here to comment on other people's work, or in an educational aspect, like my channel is or whatever, we're here to do that. You agree with what you agree with, you disregard what you don't, or file it away to be checked into later, if it's something you want to check into and then decide you agree or disagree, that's all fine. Wolftown Media, yeah, it's the same with CW superheroes. That's right. Yeah. All the heroes, they have to be gender, GLBT, blah, blah, Q, Z, XY, something or whatever. Yeah. CW's gone down that rabbit hole hard, and it's can't even come back from it. Owen Lister said the real theme of this rant is him saying he's sick of anime recommendation. I didn't even mention anime. Actually, I'm a little more sick of horror right now than I am anime. I've had horror shoved down my throat a lot more lately than I have anime. Back to the drawing board said, no, social media exists to lure everyone into thinking alike. Stop deprogramming them. Exactly. To media, I think film criticism died when Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert died. Yeah, that was sad. Roger Ebert was really something in particular. I really admired his... and I didn't agree with everything they said either. I think Roger Ebert even gave Man of Steel a thumbs up. So we know he's not perfect. Check out anything else here. Oh, Lister, I'm getting a flashback on our Aquaman rivalry. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, plenty of people disagree with me on certain things, but they, they're able to be adults about it. There was one time, I don't remember, because I never pay attention to any other YouTuber who addresses me or whatever, because I just never, more often than not, I can't say every single time, but more often than not, especially if they're attacking you, they're just looking to get, views or subs on their own channel, especially if they've got less subs than you do. They're looking to bait you, and get into a YouTube feud or something like that. So I just ignore them. But somebody did a commentary on one of my videos, and I didn't watch it through because that's just my policy. I just don't worry about that. But somebody emailed me one time because of a commentary that they had seen on one of my videos about the Joker, actually, and said, "Hey, man, I just want to say I'm really sorry. I disagree with you about the Joker, but I just automatically unsubbed from your channel and we didn't want anything to do with you at first, but then I watched so-and-so's commentary, and even though I still don't disagree with you, I understand more where you're coming from, and it's about the archetype that you don't like." Yes, exactly. And I really appreciated him writing that email. But you know, anybody who didn't give a knee jerk, visceral, angry reaction and heard me out for 2 seconds would hear, because I'm all the way through that video. I'm talking about, hey, maybe it's an amazing film, but I don't care. This is the problem. It gets the Joker wrong, wrong foundation, wrong archetypal place to start from, and so forth. David Deister, thank you for $5, sir. Says we need a Sergio Leone or a Mel Brooks in Hollywood to deconstruct the current Hollywood and the woke culture. Sergio Leone, Mel Brooks, yeah, yeah. Sad Mel Brooks isn't doing any things anymore, but you know, again, he's quite up there. What Media says I was talking about the hero's children. Not one of them is straight, like at all. Oh, I didn't know that. I haven't even stuck with the CW verse that long. I tapped out after a while because it just got stupid. Especially Supergirl. Especially Supergirl. I stopped that after season 2. Owen Lister says I was honestly just having fun pushing your buttons because I happen to enjoy Aquaman. That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, that's no worries there. All right, I think I'm caught up on the chat there. Let me check the time here. Oh, okay, it's 9:51. All right, I'm going to throw up the back in a moment screen, and I'm going to double check. I think Al should be. Al, are you still there? Are you good to go for the book club? I'm going to if you're not going to answer me in the chat here, I'll message you in a second just to make sure. But hopefully we're all good to go for Dune. And Dune doesn't have chapter numbers, so I just counted up the chapters, chapters and little breaks. And it's roughly from chapter 8 to 17 that we're looking at tonight. So that's what we're going to talk about and discuss in just a few moments. So let me switch things over here and bring Al in, and I will be right back in a few moments. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the Dune book study now as we change gears. And let me get rid of that. Nope, get rid of that and get rid of that. There we go. And bring in with me my trusty TA
Hi,
Big
Al.
Al. Say hi, Al. And Al, of course, is the perfect example of how to disagree with somebody yet still hang out on their
I felt
channel.
my ears burning.
No, I neglected to mention the panel because I was talking about the chat, which was true, but the panel, I mean, hey, Troy and Al, they have very different opinions of me on certain issues like this, but it's all good, you know. They know my channel and my shtick, and they do their own thing on other stuff. So or are you just like Al and you just flat out tell me I'm wrong and everything's sunny and
No, I
rosy
don't think I've
on my
ever
channel, and
said
that's
you're
okay too.
wrong. We have
I know
disagreed,
you would never say such a thing.
and also
Yeah,
a
you know
little
better.
thing about getting sick of horror. I kind of felt a little twinge because I think I might have started some of that.
I don't think you did it yourself, but you definitely set the ball to rolling. Like everybody jumped on that when they saw you. Now Stephen Cruz, they did it as a joke. That was hilarious. But no, that's just that. Well, you know, when you're not really into something that is kind of a predominant fandom in a certain
You
crowd you
feel
end up
left
hanging
out.
around with, it can get a little like, oh man, not left out. It's just like at one time in my life, I liked horror. Well, I grew out of that. I think everybody probably, well, not everybody, but a lot of people like it at one stage in their life, and a lot of people grew out of it. I grew out of it, and then I was in the place where I thought, well, you know, I get the appeal, I get the cultural use of it. It's just not really my thing. You know, maybe this or that movie is interesting, but then it just kept getting forced on me and forced on me.
Well, see,
Honestly, I'm to the point now
I
where I
kind of
kind of hate it. Other than like good classic monster movies or something, or just good fun Halloween
exactly. See,
movies, like the
and
horror
horror
thing, I'm out.
takes
I just don't care about
many
it.
connotations. It is different for everyone. Like you know, like I said, you could have put Hocus Pocus, Halloween Tree. Um,
I don't think any other person in the universe would think
it's got
Hocus
three
Pocus
witches
is
trying to kill
horror.
people. Come on, it's horror, but it's still
It's a
horror.
Disney movie.
It's still horror.
It's fun Halloween.
It's comedy
I wouldn't
horror,
say
but it's still
horror. I
horror.
don't think horror.
Like Bill and
Comedy
Ted.
horror is like
it
Evil
sci-fi
Dead.
or is it a comedy? It can be both.
Horror is a little extreme
Horror,
on that one. I'm going to just, I respectfully disagree
like I
with
said,
you on
you
that.
got all the Universal monsters to choose from. And I know there's a few in there you enjoy. Like I said, today, was it today I put yesterday, I was Creepshow.
Creepshow's a bit much for me.
See?
I did like Salem's Lot.
Salem's
you
Lot.
Put that picture in there.
There
I like
you go.
Salem's Lot.
That's
classic vampire stuff, though. That's not like.
See, they're out there. There's something you could have picked. Yeah. And I don't care. Yeah. But also, we'll see.
But they're not slashers. They're not,
something that evokes scare, makes you. Something quote unquote scary to an extent.
Surely, you know though that you are in the minority of those who hold that definition. Because I try and say, hey guys, I like horror too. Have you seen Hocus Pocus?
I may be in the minority and don't call Shirley. And I might be. I mean, but like I said, when I say horror, horror is many things to many people, and like I mean, look at Stephen Cruz when he played. That can be terrifying to some people, and if it terrifies him, if he gets a little spooky, but that's there.
Troy just mentioned. Let's welcome the Pacellis have just joined us. Welcome Nanette. I think Nanette said hi first. And Mr. Troy Pacelli, bringing up that Steve Cruz. He did. Steve Cruz tagged he did that Facebook challenge and put Showgirls as his first horror.
I saw the poster.
But before we go,
I knew immediately before I even looked at who did it. I knew who did
it. Yep, that's Steven. I don't see him around tonight. He said he was kind of busy lately, but he's going to try and come back and join us soon, so that's good. But I do want to thank Mr. Troy Pacelli for my avatar here. This is some Troy Pacelli Photoshop magic. The Pruff with the melange blue eyes and the still suit from the David Lynch film. And I was talking to the Pichellis the other day. When we get to the point where we finish the book study, I don't know when. I think Troy's looking at his schedule too, and we're going to see how the studies go and everything like that. But the rewatch for the David Lynch Dune is going to end up being on Troy's channel. Date to come. You know, it might not necessarily be right after this book study, but Troy's kind of an expert on the David Lynch film anyway, and is a really big Dune fan in general. So he's going to handle that rewatch because I'll have my Halloween and, you know, my Universal Monsters, classic black and white Universal Monsters, all taken up for September and October. But Al, do you want to show? Shall we show him the other
Al Harkonnen?
The other avatars we have too? Yeah, yeah. Let me change this over. So a user, one of my viewers, who I don't think watches it live, but checks out the replays, he heard me talking about how I didn't have an avatar last time. So he did this art, this custom art here that I wanted to show off for him. He made me Prof Mua Geek. That's my character here, Prof Mua Geek instead of Paul Muad'Dib. And then Al is over here, Al Conan, the Baron Al Conan. I love that. I think that's so cool. And I did tell him, I was like, thank you so much for doing that. He has a YouTube channel and that he does with another. Here he is, Phoenix Halcyon. There you're there. Watch it live. Great.
But of course, the one thing you were totally shocked at was about my picture.
You liked it because Al never likes it. A lot of people will do like fan art, and I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And I was like,
I'm very picky
but Al
when it comes to my face. But I saw that. I know who it is. I look at it. I was like, yep, that's me. I could tell. And I'm pretty cool with it. I kind of dig the proportions of it. And yeah, that's me. That would be me as Baron Harkonnen.
Yep. And Lister, thanks for $4.99. So I'll tell you what's terrifying: Teletubbies, pure nightmare. Yeah, I don't disagree with you there. But let me drop the link to Phoenix Halcyon's channel that he does with his friend. That's in the chat there now. You can see that. Definitely recommend you go give them a sub. It looks like they're a new channel, or they're growing in subs, so they could use a sub. Check them out. I do want to briefly show before we jump into the book. I want to show the Deviant art page of Phoenix here. Because you anime fans will see the heavy anime influences his work here, but he's got us up there too. This is his Deviant. Very cool, isn't it? And art looks pretty solid. A lot of very heavy in that anime style.
That's Deviant art.
Really cool, good stuff.
That's on Deviant. Oh, sweet! I'm on Deviant art.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yep. Baron Al Conan is on Deviant art, so really cool. I love that he gave me the Paul Muad'Dib hair, but he's got the little subtle beard there.
Got your glasses.
Beard. Got that working too. Yep, got the glasses. So I'll drop this link in the chat as well. Before we
how awesome is DeviantArt?
Art? Thank you again, Phoenix.
When I have nothing else to do, I'll just click on a subject and check out people's work. It's really neat. It's also where I get 99% of my posts for my Facebook pages. Fan pages that I do.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's jump into the reading for this week, and we'll see how far we get. We are covering a large swath. I didn't think it was that long to read. Some people said it was
a goodly amount. I will say that, because right when at the point I was like, man, I've read more than I usually do. And I think this is where it ends. And you're like, nope, you have 2 more chapters. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, well, let's see. So we start in the chapter. It was technically chapter 8 if you're counting them in sequence there. And this is when Jessica walks in on Dr. Yui, and he is what I like about this chapter, and this is, we've already seen it done somewhat already, but throughout the book here, especially this section, Herbert uses italics for people's inner thoughts, and that's stylistically something you can do. Sometimes you can put them in quotations if you delineate it, in the context, enough as to what it's different from spoken word. But he uses italics.
How would you, if you're writing that by hand, how would you How would you denote it?
Usually handwritten. If you underline it, it's a cue to the typist to make it in italics. Yeah, that's an old rule when people still hand wrote things, but not so much anymore. But yeah, that's the rule. You'd underline it for that sake. What I like about this interchange back and forth between Jessica and Dr. Yui is the idea that they're not really communicating. In the italics, in their thoughts, we see the truth. And that's one of the themes. Remember I said about Dune here is there's a divide. There's a divergence between rural and city. There's a divergence between the masculine and feminine. That's a heavy split. That's one of the divides that needs to be healed. And we see this in a number of places. Talking about themes, you've got Jessica is only the Duke's concubine. He won't marry her, for various reasons. There's here we have Dr. Yui, we find out why he's doing this in this chapter because of his wife. And at first we learned that a little bit before. So maybe we thought the Harkonnens had his wife captive. Now it seems more he doesn't know if she's alive or not, but he's doing this to get revenge on the Baron Harkonnen, who even if he killed his wife, he wants that chance to stand before him, having done this deed, and to exact revenge. So you've got a character like Dr. Yui, who it's very easy just to make a two-dimensional character that you hate. On the other hand, it's very easy to make him a simpering, sympathetic character. Oh, I was just forced to do this. And I like the way Herbert avoids both of those extremes by kind of going back and forth with his interiority. And you see how cunning he is. I mean, when he says, I've given away something, now I need to, okay, now I've got her thinking this. Good. So Yui ventured a thin smile, thinking, I believe it has worked. Anything unusual in my manner is due to my embarrassment. She'll not look for deeper reasons when she believes she already knows the answer. And then later, he says, she thinks I worry for her. He blinked back tears. Now, at that point, he's kind of diabolical. He's just trying to pull all these ploys and these mental tricks on her. But she thinks I worry for her. He blinked back tears. And I do, of course. But I must stand before that Black Baron with his deed accomplished and take my one chance to strike him where he is weakest in his gloating moment. So you do. So I like the fact that on the one hand, you can't condone anything he's doing. He's not blameless in this at all. And on the other hand, though, you do see that he has reasons, which is not that he hates the Duke and the lady that he actually loves quite a bit, So that's a good three-dimensional character. You get a little bit more of his vulnerability too, talking about when Jessica looks in on Paul and talking about children. He says, "Why did Juana never give me children?" Because she was a Bene Gesserit too. I know as a doctor there was no physical reason against it. Was there some Bene Gesserit reason? Was she perhaps inducted to serve a different purpose? What could it have been? She loved me, certainly. So you get this vulnerability that makes you connect with a character, even if you don't necessarily agree with what they're not a good guy necessarily. Again, later he says, "Great mother, I've aroused her suspicion. Now I must use every trick my Juana taught me. There's only one solution. Tell the truth as far as I can." Telling a little bit about Juana to get her off the track again.
Because he does have to
towards
worry
the end of that
as a Bene Gesserit, she is specifically trained to know, a lie. So if you have to keep it a half truth, that might not be picked up on.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Paul's the only one who has that really in a perfect sense of knowing when somebody lies, but any Bene Gesserit has a good sense of that too. So now we get a little bit of Jessica's interior. Oh, thank you, Netter. Yeah, everybody hit that thumbs up if you will. Looks like we got 24, 25 watching, only 16 thumbs up, unless I need to update refresh my page. But yeah, hit that thumbs up if you haven't yet. That helps the channel much. We get a little bit of Jessica's interiority too there to the end, especially when they start to talk about, why didn't the Duke marry you? And she thinks about, she could make him do this. Why did she can make him do virtually anything with her Bene Gesserit training? And he asked her flat out, "Why haven't you made the Duke marry you?" And she whirled, made him marry me. She says, "There's a good political reason. As long as my Duke remains unmarried, some of the great houses can still hope for alliance." And she sighed. And this is it, I think. Motivating people, forcing them to your will gives you a cynical attitude toward humanity. It degrades everything it touches. If I made him do this, then it would not be his doing. That idea that making people, motivating people, making them do it, manipulating them to do it, degrades your view of humanity and isn't really any kind of loyalty in the end. This is something interesting. We're going to come back to that theme in just a few moments, actually. But again, also with Dr. Yui's entirety, if only there were some way not to do this thing that I must do. So you've got this idea of, again, he's a reluctant traitor, but a traitor nonetheless. And Jessica, and it worked. His manipulations worked because Jessica leaves knowing he's holding something back, but thinking it was probably just so it wouldn't hurt her. And he's a good man and she doesn't want to embarrass him and so forth. So really great character scene, really great little section there to look at character work if you've got your own characters and you're dealing with intrigue and such.
Just
ready to move on to
an
the next
interesting
one
bit when she was actually talking about the Duke and her feelings for, about how he's actually two men.
Mm-hmm.
I just felt that was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That of course she loves the charming, witty, and considerate, tender, everything a woman could desire, but the other man is cold, callous, demanding, selfish, as harsh and cruel as a winter wind. That's the man shaped by the father, and wishing that his father had died before he really had a chance to put any influence on him.
And that's a great bringing up of this theme too, the man shaped by the father versus the man shaped by the mother, or even the woman in his life, because this is something, again, we're seeing a divide. We're seeing the masculine and feminine forces in the book or in this world not coming together, not connecting, and that's creating all the problems. So you've got the Space Guild, the Bene Gesserits, their own separate, masculine and feminine universes, right even down to a couple here who aren't really connecting as they should be. And it results in divergences within their progeny, and we'll see how that.
It's also interesting to set up because at this point we really haven't seen much of Leto. We're about to, but it's interesting to see. It kind of sets up for us to okay, which one are we going to see more of? The kind man or the demanding Duke? And you do see, both of them. So it's making the character much more complex. Even someone who most people who know what happens, he's something happens in a little bit, but he even makes the small, even characters flying around that long, very complex. I mean, Leto, you can like him, but you don't have to really like him, and there's a little bit to hate there. It's just a cool character. Sorry to ramble.
No, he's a fascinating character. We're going to get to all of that. You're absolutely right. That's stuff we're going to talk about definitely when we get to his channel or to his chapter. Stephen Cruz is with us. Welcome, Stephen Cruz, for $5, saying his characteristic Stephen Cruz word. But good to see you. We've been talking about you, buddy, in good ways. Talking about your awesome music for the channel. Talking about your horror.
There is no friend word for that on a record.
That's true. That's true. So in the next chapter, we cut to Paul over there in his bed, who luckily was able to palm that sedative that Dr. Yui gave him, so he's not actually sleeping. His goal was to get up and explore the palace a little bit once everybody else was asleep. But as he's walking toward, I think, the bookshelf or whatever, he turns around and he sees that the headboard, like the little bookshelf right behind his bed, comes down, and this hunter-seeker comes up and flies out. Now, the hunter-seeker here is this little, it's described a tiny hunter-seeker, no more than 5 centimeters long. Paul recognized it at once, a common assassination weapon that every child of royal blood learned about at an early age. It was a ravening sliver of metal guided by some nearby hand and eye. It could burrow into moving flesh and chew its way up nerve channels to the nearest vital organ.
I know.
Really wicked little thing. I mean, you're going to feel every second of that until it gets to your vital organ, and then whichever one, depending on how slow you'll die.
It's almost like a heat-seeking bullet, or it's almost like a bullet drone. Motion,
but motion-seeking instead of heat. Yeah. So it's now what I want to point out about this, and Paul's got the training to know, sits completely still. And he does so, and the shout-out Mapes comes in at one point, and Paul's able to grab it just as it lunges for Mapes. It's, I said this is a very Jungian reading. Just to remind everybody, Frank Herbert himself did study psychoanalysis under a couple who studied directly under Jung, and Frank Herbert served or practiced as a psychoanalyst, for a certain amount of time. So he knows his Jungian, psychology, and he's putting it in the book to a great degree. we're going to see the maker, the worms themselves are giant phallic symbols on Arrakis, and we'll talk about them more when we get to them. But this is a little mini phallic symbol here. This hunter seeker. It's synthetic. It's not natural. It's not organic. It's a coward's weapon, right? Because it's not a fight. It's a small weapon to be maneuvered by somebody from any vast distance.
It's an assassin's weapon,
and it can be yeah. But there's no risk. There's not even up close personal assassination. It's a very impersonal, very cowardly way to kill somebody, just to have this thing in place and set it to go. So it's in other words, in terms of a Jungian reading, it's not a very manly weapon. So as a phallic symbol, it's an example of a poor example of masculinity.
That's why it's only 5 centimeters long
or whatever. Thanks, Al.
Simply giving technical information.
Oh my gosh. So he does catch it right at the last minute, which Mapes says, well, you saved my life, so she tells him that bit about there is a traitor amongst you, we don't know who. And a nice little tight, chapter, really, really densely packed with some suspense. Good job. And she says that Jessica, his mother, is down the hall in the weirding room. It's an interesting name for it because as we go to the next chapter and find Jessica, it's actually a little I'm blanking on the word now. Like a little greenhouse room. What's the word, Al? They call it a
garden.
Botanical, a little botanical garden. It's set up with its own moisture locks and
a
its
greenhouse.
own,
you're right. There's another word in there.
Something to simulate the yellow sun, and everything is in there. They're growing all these plants and animals even that have no business being on Arrakis, of course. So, but the Mapes called that the weirding room. Weirding is kind of a word for like the magical, Now, of course, this is just science, but it's so otherworldly to somebody, a native of Arrakis, a Fremen especially, that it's interesting. She calls it the weirding room, I thought. I feel like there's a word I'm still blanking on, but maybe there's not. Maybe it's just one of those things. I think botanical gardens is as good as any, so we'll just go with that. They say at some point later, I think, but I don't know. So she gets into this room and she finds a note that the previous lady of the house had written, Margot Lady Fenring, and she remembers Lady Fenring was a Bene Gesserit as well. She reveals that in some of the codes in that letter, but that makes Lady Jessica think, wait a minute, that means the last head of this house actually married his woman, his Bene Gesserit, didn't just, keep her as a concubine. So again, that little slight wound that Jessica claims is no big deal, but it is. It keeps coming back. She knows that there's got to be a code somewhere because of, or a secret message somewhere because of the code in the letter. She eventually finds it on the underside of a leaf, and some bumps there. She finds the fact that there's going to be an attempt on his son, on Paul's life. This works out. Paul joins her soon. It's interesting to look at Paul and Jessica's talk and their little exchanges in the room here and juxtapose that with Jessica and Dr. Yui's exchanges. Because here we have mother and son, at least, as masculine and feminine, not holding back anything from each other. Paul tells her everything Shout Out Mape said. Jessica tells him everything that note said. And there are even moments where he's like, should he tell her about that? It'll worry her, but he must tell her. And likewise, she does the same for him. So you've got some of that little initial, like, oh, maybe I should keep this away. But nope, you've actually got the masculine and feminine forces here as mother and son sharing things with each other completely. And we'll talk about that as we move on too. Then you've got, of course, they're holed up there by one of the guards until they can clear the way. But Paul's father has asked for him to come since the attempt on his life. Owen Lister, thank you for another $4.99 super chat, buddy. He says, if there's anything I learned in Joseph Campbell's Hero with a Thousand Faces, is that sex plays a huge role and not just the physical kind either. Yeah, and sometimes talking about phallic symbols, it doesn't even necessarily mean or have to do with a sexual act or anything. It just has to do with the masculine psychology or the anima or the animus and stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good point.
Sure.
You good? Ready to move to the next chapter?
Wow. Yeah, sure.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, unless you have anything to say, I'm just pulling out the relevant stuff, I think, as we go along. And, things for my channel, Book Study, is to kind of look at look at the analytical aspects of it, but then also look at things we can learn from a writing perspective. Troy Pacelli Troy Pacelli says weirding is a Bene Gesserit word for the hyper-fast movements of their fighting style. To Mapes, the weirding room is a sparring room. Oh, okay. She thinks it's a sparring room. Interesting. Huh. I have to think about that and see if there's anything to make of that. Good. Thanks for bringing that up. Appreciate that. So we jump in the next chapter here, and we're with Duke Leto now, and he's off a ways away from their palace there, their initial, what they're setting up as their palace. He's set up a war room and such. And we get his italics there as well as his interiority. And he keeps going back. He keeps trying to think about all these things, but he keeps going back to that one line. They have tried to take the life of my son. And that anger, that, rightfully so, that visceral anger, boiling up in him. But he says he's talking about he thought of the notices posted now above his signature all throughout the populous places of the planet. Our sublime Padishah Emperor has charged me to take possession of this planet and end all dispute. The ritualistic formality of it touched him with a feeling of loneliness. Who was fooled by that fatuous legalism? Not the Fremen, certainly, nor the Houses Minor, who controlled the interior trade of Arrakis, and were Harkonnen creatures almost to a man. They have tried to take the life of my son. Back again. I like that idea that there's communication which no one even expects anybody to believe. It's just sort of a formality, and the communication is supposed to be real communication, communicating true things back and forth. And but so much communication in this is political, especially when we talk about the Duke here, where he's got a propaganda man and such, and we'll talk about. So he says on the next page, I must mask my feelings, when it comes to the boy, for the boy's sake, if he's ever to have a home, he must mask how he feels about this planet truly. So this idea of lying and not truly communicating, we're seeing a lot with Duke Leto, but we're going to see some great things about Duke Leto as well, as Al pointed out. To add Stephen Cruz for $5. There's a lot of phallic symbols in Showgirls, very Jungian. I allow you to do that rewatch there, sir. You host that one, buddy. You see some of Duke's, the Duke Leto's, again, some of his manipulations and machinations here are not to be admired, but some of them are. Like, he knows that he needs the spice workers who are ready to leave planet, because our fiefdom, they've got the option to leave. And he has Gurney. He says, I want, you go down, I say, I want their willing, no, he says, change, these are valuable workers, Gurney, about 800 of them. Before the shuttle leaves, you must persuade some of those men to enlist with us. How strong a persuasion, sire? I want their willing cooperation, Gurney. Those men have experience and skills we need. The fact that they're leaving suggests they're not part of the Harkonnen machine. Hawat believes these could be some very bad ones planted in the group, but he sees assassins in every shadow. So that's really, really great leadership on Leto's part. We're going to see some really great aspects of his leadership that we'll see Paul carry on. So Paul is somebody who's shaped by both father and mother.
And the one thing
that's good. That's the
integration. The line that Gurney uses is like, what kind of manipulation or whatever, gives you the idea that they've played dirty before, and he just wants to know, which way do you want me to go?
Yeah.
So it tells you the Leto.
Good point. Good point.
He's had to play dirty.
Yeah, as Duncan Idaho says later, I've slain so many Harkonnens just for the Duke or at his command and such. But, here he's playing pretty fair with these workers. He's allowing Gurney to offer them higher wages to a certain point. He can't break his treasury or whatever he says. But then he leaves for all the workers, he puts out this propaganda about how here's where all your women and children are if you brought them. And for those who didn't have women and children, just know that there are more women on Arrakis than there are men. And that should be happy for you or whatever, So very, very into that propaganda. And at the end of this chapter, I love it. This is very much in his mind. He says, command must always look confident, he thought. All the faith riding on your shoulders while you sit at the critical seat and never show it. He breathed a sigh of relief when the lift swallowed him and he could turn the face of the impersonal doors. They have tried to take the life of my son. I love that. That is so great. I mean, that just tells you what's going on in his head without the narrator having to step in and tell you,
with everything else that's weighing on him, all the politics, all the machinations of bringing Arrakis under Atreides control. He's a father, and they tried to take the life of my son. It's like the burning underlying thing that won't go away. There's all this stuff going on, but it's all swirling around that one point.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really great. And he's got the presence of mind to make all these crucial decisions, and to even know that he has to put on a face and a mask and show confidence, but it keeps coming back. He keeps coming back to that. That's a great way of showing and not having to tell,
Yeah, it tells you
where his heart is versus where his head is.
Straight up,
Exactly. Yeah. And he's got a sense of honor that needs to be rebuked, or what's the word? Satisfied. All right, so in the next chapter here, we're still with the Duke. Paul has been brought to him. And Thufir Hawat comes in, the Mentat, who wants to, it's kind of a touching scene. Paul is defending him. He's already had this conversation with his mother about Hawat. He can't be the traitor, and he still has a lot to give, even though he clearly made this mistake or whatever. But Paul defends him. The Duke's like, I should be the one defending him, not you. So you're really seeing Paul's maturity and Leto's how impressed he is with Paul's maturity. Then we have Howat comes in. He wants to resign. They won't let him. They say, "Shut up, get over it, bring the rest of the people in." So
because they do. He says,
talk about business.
He'll punish himself.
Exactly. As he does. Exactly. Through the business matters they attend to in this meeting, again, you see the shrewdness of the Duke. So sometimes it's kind of admirable, and in other times it's not so admirable. Even Paul calls it out a couple times, at least in his mind. But at one point here, he says, Gurney, I want you to lead a delegation, an embassy, if you will, to contact those romantic businessmen. Tell them I'll ignore their operations as long as they give me a ducal tithe. So these are smugglers, who are just stealing the spice. As long as they give me a ducal tithe. Hawat there estimates that graft and extra fighting men heretofore required in their operations have been costing them 4 times that amount. Okay, so that makes sense. That's why they would do it. They would happily give a tithe rather than have to pay for all this protection. And what if Emperor gets the wind of this? Halleck asked. He's very jealous of his chosen prophets, my lord. Leto smiled. We'll bank the entire tithe openly in the name of Shaddam IV and deduct it legally from our levy support costs. Let the Harkonnens fight that. And we'll be ruining a few more of the locals who grew fat under the Harkonnen system. No more graft. That's pretty brilliant. I mean, that's, Then, let's see. The next thing he does here I think is interesting is they're talking about the houses that won't join with them and the houses that are still either loyal to the Harkonnens or kind of hedging their bets and just sort of paying lip service. And one man speaks up and says, there's no justice in this. And I love this line because this is very much gets you into the heart of the Duke here. He says, justice? The Duke looked at the man. Who asks for justice? We make our own justice. We make it here on Arrakis, win or die. Do you regret casting in your lot with us? The man stared at the Duke then. No, sire, you couldn't turn, and I would do naught but follow you. Forgive the outburst, but he shrugged. We must all feel bitter at times. And then this is really great leadership here. Bitterness, I understand, the Duke said, but let us not rail about justice as long as we have arms and the freedom to use them. Do any of the rest of you harbor bitterness? If so, let it out. This is a friendly council where any man may speak his mind. It's very key here what he's doing. He's not letting people decry fate. Don't look for justice when you can stand up and we can do something about it. Don't sit around and say, but we've been treated so unfairly. Oh, we're on this desert planet. That's such a slippery slope in their surroundings right now. And the Duke will not let his men go down that. Hey, if you're angry, let it out right here with me, your Duke at the table even, but let's not go down that slope. I really like that leadership. Now, on the next, is it the next page here? No, we're not quite to it yet, but we get to here too. So, we also find out a little bit about reconnaissance and whatnot. It's very much a meeting scene. What you need one of these, and I think it's done well because you get a lot of information, but it's still interwoven with a lot of action. We find out that the Fremen kind of mock the shields. Idaho says they have they're mostly amused by the idea of shields. And again, in terms of fighting, shields is a technological, synthetic way of doing it. These body shields that they have, even though they're very interesting, we've learned about from Paul and Gurney's duel earlier, but they don't work on Arrakis. Arrakis is a very primal place, And we find out why they don't work later, because they draw
not only does it draw them,
sandworms and
it
whatnot.
appears to drive them into a killing frenzy. You don't want to have something hundreds of meters long tipped off at you.
Yeah, exactly. So they've got instead of the shields, they've got the crysknife. So far, this is what we've seen, in terms of Fremen technology, and which is the organic tooth of the worms. So this is very much of the land and of organic content. Paladin Demo says, yeah, best way to win over the people. Absolutely. Being a leader like that. I'm skipping over a little bit here, Al, so you tell me if I skip over anything you want to talk about, because this is a pretty dense chapter, and we could easily just spend all night on it, but I'm just kind of going to the things I see of interest here. The next thing that Duke says, so these are Harkonnens, some of the houses loyal to the Harkonnen are the Harkonnen agents. Duke has had his Mentat and his people destroyed, take them out, basically kill them. He says, we've eliminated 259 of their key people, my lord. No more than 3 Harkonnen cells remain, perhaps 100 in all. These Harkonnen creatures you eliminated, the Duke said, were they propertied? Most were well situated, my lord, in the entrepreneur class. And here's what the Duke says. He says, I want you to forge certificates of allegiance over the signatures of each of them. The Duke said, file copies with the judge of the change. We'll take the legal position that they stayed under false allegiance. Confiscate their property, take everything, turn out their families, strip them, and make sure the crown gets its 10%. It must be entirely legal. So on the one, it's very shrewd, and it's good business for him, but it's also pretty harsh dealings with not only the individuals who might be against him, but their families and all of it. It's pretty underhanded. And everybody, Thufir smiles. Everybody thinks this is a great idea, but Paul, in his mind, in his italics there, it's wrong, Paul thought. This will only make the others fight all the harder. They've nothing to gain by surrendering. Makes perfect sense, right? They're not going to, if you treat them with no quarter, then they have no desire to ask for quarter, So it makes perfect sense, from Paul's point of view there, and why he would be against it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then pretty much right after that, we meet Stilgar. Stilgar is the chief of the Sietch there that Idaho has been out there investigating and whatnot. And he comes in about the mercenary they found a crysknife on. And Stilgar comes in announcing, keep that crysknife sheathed. Do not take it out. And there's immediate tension because the Duke is there. He calls the shots. And you got Stilgar, this chief of the native, Sietch of Fremen there, who comes in and starts calling shots himself. And Duke Leto has the presence of mind not to make this an issue. He realizes, no, we need good relations. So he overlooks certain things that Stilgar does, rightly so, obviously. So we realize this is a custom. Stilgar even says at one point, anybody who sees the crysknife unsheathed, they are ours. They may never leave Arrakis without our consent. That's not something you tell the Duke, of the land there. Halleck and several of the others started to rise, angry expressions on their faces. Halleck said, the Duke Leto determines whether... One moment, please, Leto said. And the very mildness of his voice held them. This must not get out of hand, he thought. He addressed himself to the Fremen. Sir, I honor and respect the personal dignity of any man who respects my dignity. I am indeed indebted to you, and I will always pay my debts. If it is your custom that the knife remain sheathed here, then it is so ordered by me. And if there is any way we may honor the man who died in your service, you may have but to name it. That's great. Again, great leadership. Really great, diplomacy. And he established that I'm going to follow your will in this without giving away any of his power. Mm-hmm. He made it a point of dignity, right? No, I'll do this because I'm honor bound to you for this reason or whatever. Didn't give up any bit of his power, at least in terms of face there. Then, of course, it gets even juicier when Stilgar spits on the table in front of him and everybody's ready to crucify the poor guy. And Idaho has to point out, nope, that's a sign of respect. He's sharing his water with you. That's given the planet's customs and how precious water is there and stuff. So it's a little tense there. But Idaho ends up signing up for a dual allegiance between the Duke and Stilgar Sietch. And this is interesting. This is something we'll come back to. So something to take note of. Again, skipping over some things. Is there anything else in that chapter?
No, I really like Stilgar. I just think he's a great character, and I do. Mm-hmm. And like I said, you mentioned how Leto was handled the situation. He showed great leadership, but he also showed he showed the wisdom that he needs to deal with the Fremen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In the next chapter here, we've got this really neat little exchange. It's very short, but this little exchange between the Duke and Thufir Hawat, his mentat here. And in this, we get Hawat's perception of the Duke, and he sees the Duke as a divided man as well to a certain point. So the Duke knows that perhaps he suspects I distrust him. He must know I've private reports of traitors. Well, best quiet his fears immediately. So Thufir, he said, since you're the only one of the few I can trust, so he knows how to deal with his men, even knows how to deal with his mentat there. But then later, as he's talking, Hawat thinks this. Hawat continued to stare at him, thinking, this is how I like him best. This is the man of honor who deserves every bit of my loyalty and service. Why must I hurt him? Because he knows, remember, we've already known that the Harkonnens have arranged things so that the Lady Jessica will come under suspicion. So Hawat's already got this suspicion. He's about to tell the Duke. But I like that idea there of this is the way I love him best. This is the man of honor versus the shrewd man of politics, perhaps, or any other way he might be. So he tells Leto about Lady Jessica. What's interesting is that Leto never, ever seems to believe this. Never. I love his first initial thought is Leto shook his head thinking, what a slimy piece of business. There can't be anything in it. I know my woman. And then later on, he tells Hawat, what better way to destroy me than to sow suspicion of the woman I love? So what he keeps coming back to is the fact that, no, she's with me. We are united. Me, the masculine, her, the feminine. We are united in our relationship. That can't be divided. So he never really believes it, which I think is to his credit. What he decides to do about it, I think we can judge. But that idea that can't be divided asunder, even though we know it needs to be joined a bit more strongly. Toward the end of the chapter, we get some of the Duke's thoughts here as well. And this is what I love. He says, the Harkonnens have hindered and hounded and hunted me for the last time, he thought. They are dung heaps with village provost minds. Here I make my stand. And he thought with a touch of sadness, I must rule with eye and claw as a hawk among lesser birds. Unconsciously, his hand bruised the hawk emblem on his tunic. We later find out that most of the birds on Arrakis are birds of prey. So there's really not any lesser birds on Arrakis. It's not a planet for avian creatures like that primarily. It's a planet for the earthbound. It's a planet of the worms, of the Fremen, of the those who are digging to the earth for the water and the spice and so forth. These winged creatures are the minority and the ineffective on the planet. And it's very different from Kaladin, where he came from. So the fact that his house crest is that hawk, and he's thinking in the terms of I must rule with eye and claw, we're going to see him use his eye and claw a little bit here, which is pretty great. It's a pretty great scene. But this is why he can't survive on Arrakis long, ultimately, just symbolically, just thematically, as the text is laying out. Anything else you want to read that chapter?
Yeah,
just a short one, but anything else you want to talk about that
interchange? He talked after when he was talking to Thufir, is like, let him be suspicious. Suspicion is his trade, not mine. Perhaps if I appear to believe this, that will make another man careless. So I think you were alluding to the way he's going to do it, how he's going to handle. Jessica.
Yeah, exactly. And that brings us to the very next chapter, where he calls Paul in, and he tells Paul, I need to act like your mother's a traitor. I know she's not, but if I act like it, then maybe I can make somebody careless. Maybe I can drive something out. And to the point where he says, you can't even tell her. She must think I really think she's a traitor. That's straight up evil, man. Come on. But his reasoning, which I don't think is very good reasoning, he says, your mother's response must not be an act. Oh, she's capable of a supreme act, but too much rides on this. I hope to smoke out a traitor. It must seem that I've completely cozened. She must be hurt this way that she does not suffer greater hurt later. So in his mind, this is all for the greater good still doesn't make a lot of sense. She's the Lady Jessica, Bene Gesserit. She would be able to act, and as he says, even admits to, But he's telling Paul, should anything happen to him, he wants Paul to at least vindicate him to her later. Really, just not a. This is a real failing of the Duke here, and it kind of marks him. You kind of know, just even if you're reading through it the first time, despite the Reverend Mother and all the prophecies saying the Duke won't survive, you kind of know he's not going to survive because of these things he does. It'd be great if he did, because in some ways he's a great leader. We'll see him exhibit great leadership even more in the next chapter, or one of the next chapters. But he doesn't quite understand life on Arrakis. He's still playing the high politics of the Empire, and this is Arrakis now. This is not the place for that, Anything else? Let's see. Flower Channel.
No, I think that's pretty.
There,
except for him considering what the crowd was yelling, Mahdi.
Yeah, and he has he had Hawat look into that yet, or Hawat gives him the report on it. So they have this is interesting. They have a prophecy there. Now Jessica's known about it a little bit. She thinks the Bene Gesserits had sown a version of their Kwisatz Haderach prophecy there in times of past, but it's coming to fruition there that a Bene Gesserit lady will either come there with the Messiah that she's already born, or will bear a Messiah on the planet. So that's why when they come there and they see the Bene Gesserit woman with her son Paul, they're calling him Muad'Dib, and that is
they call him Mahdi.
No, that's not Mahdi. That's right. Yeah, but so the idea that he might be a Messiah type, and the Duke wants him to make use of that should he ever need to, and so forth. The next chapter, they go out and meet Dr. Kynes finally, and this is the judge of the change that we've been talking about. Kynes is a fascinating character here. He's kind of hard to pin down. He says he's not Fremen, but he's not Harkonnen either, and yet he's very much of the Fremen. He's very much in their ways, all the way, pretty much. Very integrated in them, but he's the Emperor's man, as he says. Now, he's been ordered, he tells us right upright, in his interiority, that he's been ordered to privilege the Harkonnens in this interchange. He's in on the scheme, the conspiracy against Duke Leto here. And yet he has these, so at first he kind of hates Leto, ordering him around. Kynes has this idea that he's the boss around here, and this Duke, keeping me up half the night with questions and blah, blah, blah. Has a problem addressing Duke and Paul as he should, with the proper titles. Kynes stared at them, seeing that water, fat flesh, But he's taken by Paul's, how much Paul plays into these prophecies. They will greet you with the holy words, and your gifts will be a blessing. He remembers certain things about the prophecies. When he tries tightens up their still suits for them, Paul already has his perfectly tightened, and he remembers, he shall know your ways as though born to him, and he's remembering all these keys from the prophecy. So they're going out for an inspection of the spice mining fields. That's what Kynes is taking them to. And I like this little interchange they have as they're talking and asking the things that Kynes is a ecologist. He's a planetologist there. He knows the planet. This is part of Herbert's interest in ecology and stuff like that as well, comes out through Kynes. And Kynes says, Kynes darted a hard stare at the Duke. Arrakis could be an Eden if its rulers would look up from grubbing for spice. So this is something we're going to see Kynes kind of betray a little bit more and more, that Arrakis has the resources. There's enough water. It could do this if people would stop playing politics over it and playing, spice wars over it and so forth. As they're flying, they're getting closer. Gurney Halleck sings a song. It references the Israelites in the desert. Our fathers ate manna in the deserts and the burning places where whirlwinds came. Lord, save us from that horrible land. Save us, oh, save us from that dry and thirsty land. I like that, just a mention of manna in the desert. And then we can liken that to the spice that the gods of Arrakis, the makers, leave behind, which are later, as we'll find out, they're called by the Fremen, the sandworms. And we'll find out they're responsible for the spice themselves. So that manna from the god left in the desert. You know, that this is a picture of that, and we'll see what to make of that later when we get into it more. Again, I'm going to skip over some of the things to get to the real action of this, Al, but you stop if you want to talk about anything in particular that comes up. But as they near this mining cloud, Kynes is telling them about the process there and how people are there to look for worm sign, because worms will always come. That noise, that sound of the spice mining, they will show up at some point. So there are these customs. They've got people looking for worm sign to call it out. And the Duke ends up spotting it first. Remember, he said he would rule with eye and claw, you know, the hawk from above, and he's in the ornithopter, which Troy helped me understand this the other night. They're actually these big flying mechanisms with wings, literally wings out in the side flapping. So the thopter just always kind of makes me think of a helicopter, you know, but no, these are actual winged.
Always kind of pictured like a mechanical dragonfly.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it. Yeah, definitely. So as they spot, you know, the Duke spots a worm sign and they call it in. And this is another great aspect to his leadership. He really shows forth here, and he makes a big impression on Kynes. Apparently, the one who spots worm sign gets an extra bonus because of, you know, it's for incentive. And the Duke says, the bonus is mine, but I want it distributed among you men. So, you know, great little act of endearing them to him himself. Then the actual spice miner, I forget the name of the machine that they're on there. The rescue is not coming for it, and the worm's going to be upon them. So the Duke decides to rescue the men himself. He's flying that ornithopter, and he makes the call to rescue the men himself off of that contraption there, so that they won't get swallowed up by the worm. And as he's flying over, Kynes thought of cool in this Duke. As he looks over at him, he has to kind of force the men off because they don't want to leave all that spice at first.
Yeah, that's a
Paul
huge
points,
amount of money that's about to get swallowed.
Yeah, it's a big deal. But the Duke doesn't even think twice about it. The men come first to him, you know. They did see a couple extra men nearby, and Paul realizes they're Fremen. He spots them as Fremen, and Kynes, you know, oh no, they're not. Why would you think that? But again, you know, the chosen one would know that. They're in no danger. They know how to live here. They know how to outwit the worm, and so forth. Then at the end, this is what I want to get to with Kynes. So as they rescue the people, they're flying back. Leto turned to hard stare at Kynes, and Kynes, returning the stare, found himself troubled by a fact he observed here. All right, now remember, Kynes is ordered to not betray, but to because he never had loyalty to him to begin with, but to be part of the conspiracy against the Duke there as the judge of the change. And Kynes has this observation: was concerned more over with the men than he was over the spice. He risked his own life and that of his son to save the men. He passed off the loss of a spice crawler with a gesture. The threat to men's lives had him in a rage. A leader such as that would command fanatic loyalty. He would be a difficult one to defeat. Against his own will and all his previous judgments, Kynes admitted to himself, I like this Duke. So this puts Kynes in a really interesting situation too, and makes him a little more three-dimensional and interesting a character as well.
Yeah. And this is where I thought was the end, but no, 2 more chapters.
I got 2 more chapters. Yeah, and let me check our time. Yeah, we're still, I don't know. Well, let's get into the next one. See, here's the thing. This highly uncomfortable dinner party, it's a great scene. And we get to see how the higher ups, how the politics of the aristocracy and stuff like that operate, and how far removed they are from the actual land, of Arrakis. But there's a lot of cool things in there, but I just didn't see a huge amount to talk about necessarily. So let me just go through some of the stuff I pulled out, and Al, you talk about anything you see in it as well. But they're in this dining hall. First, we have this old custom the Harkonnens had, where the guests would basically wring out water, just fresh water on these claws, and then that would be the drippings of it would be allowed to the peasants outside. And you find out that some of the servants were even selling it to them, so really ugly business. And as Duke Leto points out, how typical of a Harkonnen thief, the Duke thought, the degradation of the spirit that can be conceived. He took a deep breath, feeling rage tighten his stomach. This custom stops here, and he decides just to give them the water freely, so everybody can have a cup of water.
But of course,
Uh,
I used to sell those
and
squeezins,
okay.
as they call them. So now, someone's out of business. A little.
Yeah, exactly. The servant who wanted to squeeze them, and he sees her greed, and he keeps having these premonitions already, are feelings that he won't last long. And I love this line. I'm getting old, he thought. I felt the cold hand of my mortality end in what? An old woman's greed. Again, that coming from the feminine, a failure to connect or a failure to, understand the other side and such. He's got to be kind of cold to Jessica because he still knows he's going to accuse her of this thing as they move along. We meet the other characters here. This Butte, the water shipper. There's a banker. A lot of things are said, and then the truth behind it is thoughts. So you see those italics show up a lot in this chapter as they say certain things, and then they talk about think about what they really wanted to say or what they really meant. Kynes does sort of give away a little bit that he thinks Jessica might be in this prophecy. He says something to her about the shortening of the way, and of course the translation of that is the Kwisatz Haderach. And Jessica thought that our mission area, Proctiva, plant that legend here too. And the idea here is that, and she thinks to herself, maybe Paul could be the Kwisatz Haderach. When you look at mythology and psychology here, you can't separate the Messiah from the Blessed Mother types. You just can't do it. Now, not to offend my Protestant listeners or anything, but this is just such a visceral type in our human psyche. And a lot of mythicists, for example, mythicism is a school of thought that looks at comparative mythology, like the Joseph Campbell types. And they'll often say, well, Christianity, for example, can't be true because look at all of these Christ types we've seen in the world in mythologies long before the time of Christ. Look at how many children of the gods or Messiah type characters were sacrificed, and you had these sort of blessed mothers, the Isis and Horus, I think, all these different types. And it's clearly the whole Jesus story just developed out of older mythology. That's their argument. As Chesterton would go on to say, and I think it's really relevant here to us because we're actually, Christian Catholics here, but also just anybody from a mythological perspective, Chesterton would say in The Everlasting Man, no, that's a proof that it's true. Because if something like that is so indelibly marked in the human psyche, then there has to be truth to it. Now you can go on into apologetics, and we can link in it, and argue straight for Christianity or something. But for the sake of mythology here, the idea is that if it's that indelibly linked, then it's part of that archetypal collective unconscious that Jungian calls it. So it's true, even though you might not be able to access it necessarily. It's absolutely true. And you can't argue against it just because you can see how it developed or certain strains and patterns that echo out in the past and in the future from that moment, and such like that. So the idea here of the mother, the blessed, the not necessarily always a virgin mother in terms of mythology, but this the mother of God, the nurturing mother, and then her son, who would be the Messiah. Frank Herbert understands this myth very well. So you definitely see Christ type here, but you also see mythological types here with Paul. And I think that's key here in the idea that she's she is the one specifically prophesied of. Now, she's not the Messiah. The Messiah comes from her, but the prophecy says she will be there, whether she's already had the Messiah or will bear the Messiah. She's kind of the sign, right? And that's one of, even in Christian theology, that's one of the signs of the Messiah, the Christian Messiah, is that behold, a virgin shall give birth. You'll see, that she shall be one of the signs there of it, of the coming of that. So, that's in Christian theology as well as mythology in general.
Not only Paul's mother, but a surrogate mother to everyone on Arrakis.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the next thing here. So we have when Jessica's thinking about how the Duke must be cognizant of this, how the need for their people to mingle with Arrakis' people. And she says, we are father and mother surrogate to them all. Nothing impresses that fact more firmly than this sort of social sharing. She understands the need for both the presence of the father and mother source. Leto doesn't quite get that, right? He's still he won't marry her. He's still doing his own things. No, we need to accuse her just for this sake or that sake and such. So Leto doesn't understand that need for that integration as she does. But yeah, great point. In little ways too, like when he doesn't like her having the smuggler there, but she thinks, my darling, can't you see the smuggler controls fast ships, that he can be bribed? We must have a way out, or escape from Arrakis if all else fails us here. Well, Leto's not even thinking along those terms. Nothing can fail them, and she doesn't say that to him. She only thinks it. Again, that disconnect.
I like the guy who manufactures still suits, and Jessica says, I'm told only a fool would be caught in the deep desert wearing one of the man's suits.
That's right. Yeah, I forgot about that part.
Man makes pastel suits. Something doesn't feel right. Oh my god.
Yeah. We get some more information about the people there. Jessica discovers that the water bank guildsman is a representative of what did you say? The man was a Harkonnen agent. He had the prime speech pattern suddenly masked but exposed to her trained awareness as though he had announced himself. So she realizes, does this mean the guild itself has taken sides against House Atreides? She realizes there's this conspiracy against them to a certain point. And the manufactured nature of the guest's behavior. So the water guilds, the water banker there is the young lady with him is trained. Jessica sees through it that she's supposed to say these things about him or call him this and that so that he can respond this or that way. Kynes, though, is the one that butts up against them a bit. And I think it's because of Kynes' own divided spirit. He knows he's ordered to go against the Duke here, and yet he does feel some sort of kinship or loyalty to the Duke. There's interesting little telling moments too when Paul talks about, they're talking about the birds of prey, and Paul talks about, they must be cannibals, and where did you get that from? And Kynes said it's a rule of ecology that young master appears to understand quite well. The struggle between life elements is the struggle for the free energy of a system. Blood's an efficient energy source. So again, Kynes is giving us the real laws that Arrakis works according to, and Paul's tapped into that, whereas his father's not. Kynes is also, he starts to argue for the fact that Arrakis could be remade and could be, made into a lush planet. There is enough water, but then he backs down from it. Again, he kind of betrays himself. He wants to talk about this, but he doesn't. He stops and realizes he's ordered not to. I like that Jessica has this thought. She says, tensions are oddly distributed here tonight. There's too much going on of which I'm not aware. I have to develop new information sources because it's very, as you said, uncomfortable. But perhaps the biggest part of it that comes to a head, which I love, is when the Duke has to go and see to some security measure. The Harkonnens were trying to get laser guns or whatever he says through. And somebody says, the banker, I think it is, who disregards call, or maybe it's Butte, disregards Paul as, oh, yes, this boy who we must treat as a man, or whatever. And Jessica clenched her right hand on her fist beneath the table, and they see Idaho and Halleck, tense up. And Paul just steps in, and I love this. Paul he just starts talking about the story. In our last planet, I saw this man drowned, a body of a man drowned in water, which would be so foreign to them, it would catch their interest, as it does. And Paul hesitated then. Yes, immersed in water until dead, drowned. What an interesting way to die, she murmured. Paul's smile became brittle. He returned his attention to the banker. The interesting thing about this man was the wounds on his shoulders made by another fisherman's claw boots. This fisherman was one of several in a boat, a craft of traveling on water, that floundered, sank beneath the water. Another fisherman helping recover the body said he'd seen marks like this man's wounds several times. They meant another drowning fisherman had tried to stand on this poor fellow's shoulders in an attempt to reach up to the surface, to reach the air. Why is this interesting? The banker asked. Because of an observation made by my father at the time. He said the drowning man who climbs on your shoulders to save himself is understandable, except when you see it happen in the drawing room. Paul hesitated just long enough for the banker to see the point coming then. And I should add, except when you see it at the dinner table. This wonderful, sly, civilized way Paul has to call out the banker's childish little, me, I'm going to be on top, with his little asides like that. Paul doesn't rise to it. Paul doesn't, slap him back in the face. How dare you say that to me? Paul just calls him out on how ridiculous and childish he's being. And that's even more of an affront to his honor, and it almost comes to blows. I mean, Jessica even gives him the signal, prepare for violence, until the smuggler and Kynes kind of cues some of them in to deflate the situation. And Jessica's like, why do they intrude? She doesn't understand this. And the banker, so everybody starts talking. It kind of deflates it, kind of the situation. And she says, where Kynes leads, people follow, Jessica thought. He has told us he sides with Paul. What's the secret of his power? It can't be because he's judge of the change. That's temporary, and certainly not because he's a civil servant. So we've got questions about Kynes here and his idea here. Also, she realizes this empty-headed little female here is not an empty-headed little female. She's trying to do these certain things with her machinations. Anything else in this chapter you wanted to say, Al? Because I know there's so much in it. It's another one that we could talk forever about, but just in terms of the themes we're looking for.
Just like I said,
anything else you want to say about it?
See everyone like. I would love to have been at the table watching all this going on. Because it was very uncomfortable. I called it a fair party from hell when we were talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It's like, even bring a woman trying to try to seduce her son. Good Lord.
I know. Yeah, every base is covered. They see there. I'm looking at technically we have two more little chapters here. The one about finding Idaho drunk isn't so much there, but I do want to talk about the one between the interaction between Jessica and Thufir that we're going to get. I think I'm going to call it here in terms of the study tonight. And I think what we'll do, looking at where the book comes here, I think we've got just a little ways to go. Not quite as much as we read tonight, but we've got a little ways to go from here to the end of book 1. Then we get to book 2. And there are 3 books in the novel is divided into 3 books. I think this would be a good stopping point. And next week, I've got stuff going on this weekend too. So I think if anybody thought this was a heavy reading load, we can just do a shorter reading load for next week and just read up to the conclusion of book 1. Again, not the novel itself. The novel itself is divided into 3 books. As sometimes they are.
We're going to pick up to
this one is going to be
pick up at the chapter where it says there is no escape. We pay for the violence of our ancestors. That's going to be the first chapter. We've already read that one. But we're going to pick up there next time.
Well, we're going to pick up discussion with Jessica heard the disturbance in the Great Hall. That's what we're going to continue discussing next time. We've already read that chapter. If you read the assigned stuff, Leto stood in the foyer of his house. We read that one already. No, we didn't read that one already. That's the one we're going to pick up with. Leto stood in his
foyer of his house was where we left off.
In the foyer of his house. Yeah, you'll continue reading that to the end of book 1. So. And in my book, that's about 60-ish pages. Gives us a shorter sampling for next time, in case anybody thought this one was too long or whatever. And it'll give us a chance to discuss these last 2 chapters we had for this time that I want to go in a little bit more depth than what we have time for.
Just make sure you put a picture. I gotta find it. Well,
I don't have to put a picture of book 2. I mean, everyone.
Because remember the last time I had a hard time finding the where we ended.
So you need it. Put a picture up for you
because your numbers are different because you have a hardcover. See, and I have the soft cover, and the numbers are different.
Well, the page numbers are different, but the divisions are the same. But if anybody needs it, I'll put a picture up. Yeah, on the Facebook group. I'll put it up for Al. Jedi Master Zetopia, thank you very much for a $10 super chat. It says, thanks for a great discussion and adding depth to a novel I've read at least 6 times. You guys rock. That's awesome. I'm glad. That's what I like to hear. This is such a deep, rich novel. And it's kind of like going to a literature class. Different professors are going to have different things they'll draw out from it, So if other people did a study of this book, they might pull out more of the science stuff, or whatever. But these are the things that I pull out. And people seem to respond to it. So I like that.
Book 2, Muad'Dib.
You found what?
So I went to soft cover.
So you okay now? I don't need to put a picture of book 2.
Is where it ends.
Okay.
So it's about
you can read the big 2 words there. Book
pages,
2.
So, yeah.
Okay. 60-ish around in my book, but yeah, that's cool. So that's what we'll do for next week. That is Thursday. Any other words you want to say about our sampling for tonight, though, before we move on to closing up?
No, love the sandworm scene. Really great. It was really good because, like you said, until then you get a lot of talk. There's a lot of things, but tonight we got some really good action. We got the Hunter Seeker. It was a short scene, but it was like nice to have that bit of action. And then we get finally to be the Sandworm.
Yeah.
Shy of.
That's a good point. And we didn't talk about that much. So maybe next time we can go back and actually talk about our first look at the Sandworm, because I was just kind of going into the Duke's head there. But that's a good point. So we'll go back and look at that as well. Yeah, good idea. Let me see if I missed anything chat-wise. Oh, and listen to the Dr. Trader bit reminds me of the famous Judas contract plot from Teen Titans. Oh, good connection. Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yui.
Yeah. All right.
Of course, we learn a lot.
Yui.
We really don't bring up the little sections at the beginning a lot.
Yeah, I haven't talked much about the epigrams, except last time, the one about the
Well, I'm just saying, it's just funny when it's like, how many, they're all like authored by Princess Irulan, the Emperor's daughter. It's like, because she had a lot of time to write, which comes through, know why later, but it's funny. What else are you going to do?
Yeah. So, this is Thursday. Tomorrow, Fan Man Tonight.
Yeah, I think 8.
Did you say what time? 8
Eastern,
8,
7 Central, 6 Mountain.
Yeah, that's tomorrow. And then Saturday, we're over on Troy's channel for another rewatch, Saturday rewatch for the time travel
Somewhere
theme.
And in Time, starring Christopher Reeve and the lovely Jane Seymour.
Yes. So classic film, based on the Matheson novel, Somewhere in Time. Yeah, he dropped the link for it right there. Good. So that link's already dropped. That's Saturday. This Sunday is the Weeb Watch on Mr. Matchstick's channel, and he's going to be doing the X-Men, the anime of the X-Men. So that's pretty fascinating.
Watching anime.
Glad we got the radio edit there.
Can't play the entire song sometimes.
And then Monday night, Sound Engravers Monday Night Muse is going to come to us with a commentary. We all missed her last Monday, so we'll have that again this Monday, which will be great.
She better have
Tuesday.
A doctor's note for missing that little Missy. I don't know if she's listening, but
I think she said she didn't do all the reading this night, so she's tuned in for part of it, but I think she was finishing up on the reading. I think she had mentioned. Tuesday night, back to my channel for the last of the Tuesday night classics before we start our Universal Monsters the following week. I've decided to go back and fill in the gap a little bit, and for Tuesday, Batman Mask of the Phantasm. This is it's a classic. Of course, it's the greatest Batman movie ever made. I think many people agree with me. It just happens to be animated. It's from the animated series. And if you remember, Fan Man did a rewatch of it some like months ago or whatever, but I want to do a rewatch of it in light of everything we've been talking about for film noir, because the Batman animated series itself was highly influenced by noir. And I think we can see a lot of film noir influence in Mask of the Phantasm. So that's going to be our rewatch for Tuesday, just to kind of fill in that little gap, touching back on noir before we jump to Universal Monsters the following week.
And for more information on Universal Monsters, go to Iconic Universal Monsters on Facebook. Thank you.
That's right. Facebook.com/Iconic Universal Monsters. That's Al's Facebook page he runs there. Very good stuff. Oh, Sound Engraver is here. She said, I'll get something for you guys on Monday. Something art. Good. So we'll be there, Al. And Troy is dropping all these links. Very much appreciate that. Troy just dropped the link to the Facebook group as well, the Professor Geek Facebook group. Go there, join in conversation. That's a great place for that. And to keep up,
I shared a funny cartoon I found on another site. I thought it was pretty funny. Yeah.
I just saw that, the apocalypse, the Cthulhu and Godzilla. Yeah, that was pretty good. Yeah, 2020. And then, of course, next Thursday we'll be back to finish up book 1 of Dune here. So and then of course Tuesdays and Thursday mornings around 11ish, Fan Man's got his Second Cup Cafe. So there's that for you day dweller, you day walkers out there. I've been slowly getting on a better schedule because I got teaching coming up again next week, and I was up pretty early this morning. I'll be up again in the morning, and so getting on a better schedule. Not crazy about it, but I am doing it.
Sunscreen, my friend.
I know, lots of sunscreen. Hey, I was out mowing the lawn today. I'm all tanned and glistening.
Right to it.
Oh. Nutters Network says, don't forget to do all the YouTube things, like, share, and subscribe. Absolutely, like, share, subscribe, click the bell. Helps all of our channels out greatly. And you can find all those channel leaks here where Troy posted them, or on the Facebook group as well. Nutters Network, Big Al Presents, Troy Bocelli. Troy Bocelli has the Klingon Cleric one too. He's going to do some stuff with soon. It'll be pretty cool.
And of course, Age Boomer starting out.
Good.
Mr. Mac.
Yeah. Age of Boomer's channel, Mr. Matchstick, Sound Engraver, Fan Man, all these great channels that all together in the community. I think I covered everything. Al, anything else?
Well, I think we're good.
Think we're good. All right. Well, I'm going to go rest my voice for just a little bit. But thanks, guys, for tuning in. Thanks for hanging out during the pre-show. I'll cut that out as its own video, of course, as usual, and make this just the book study. But thanks for hanging out with us. I'm really excited about how this is all being received, pretty well received. So that's good. It's good stuff.
I'm just trying to wonder what the Fremen would call the word moist.
Oh, my gosh. And on that note, we're going to call it. So thanks for hanging out with us. And until next time, continue. I don't even know what my sign-off is anymore, Al.